Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Carl's Roller Coaster Podcast. Hello, dear friends. How are you all? Today, I have Theo Van Der Loo, great friend of mine. We've been friends for many years now. An entrepreneur, a business person, and guitarist of Ego Kill Talent. So many conversations in the past that should have been recorded. He's such a great mind. I love the way Theo thinks. I love the way he deals with life in general. And I do admire the guy so much. He's a very intelligent guy, very intelligent person. And we're going to tap into subjects here that you probably wouldn't expect. Okay? So stay tuned. Listen up, because this is a very cool conversation I've had with my good friend Theo Van Der Loo. Hello, Theo! Welcome to the roller coaster, my friend. How are you?
Hey, what's up, Cole? All good, and you?
I'm very well, my friend. I'm enjoying a little bit the summer here in Britain. We had this heat wave a week ago, and it's really funny because I obviously lived in Brazil for so many years, and you live in Rio, so like 35 degrees Celsius, it's not that much of a trouble for Brazilians. But when it comes to the Brits, they create all sorts of different warnings for the public. And but yeah, it just lasted for literally 3 days, and now it's gray outside, but the temperature is good. How's things in Brazil? How's things in Rio?
It's all good. I'm actually in São Paulo right now.
Okay.
But here it's a kind of a weird winter. Usually used to be way worse. As you said, I was born in Rio, so I spent most of my time in my life in Rio, but I've been living in São Paulo for a few years now, and the winter here usually can be really bad. But for the last 3 years, it's not really winter, man. It's just a little chill at night, but it's not like that cold anymore.
Do you think there's anything to do with climate change, perhaps? I know it's a bit of a rhetorical question because, but yeah, do you think there's any involvement with that?
Yeah, I do think so. I think that climate's changing everywhere. The rainy seasons are off place everywhere too, even in Europe. I know. In the last European summer, some festivals had to deal with rain, which was not common for that time period,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. No, it's crazy. We had here 38.7 degrees recorded last week, which was the hottest day ever recorded in England, ever. So that's pretty crazy if you think that the highest temperature before was recorded in 2015, and it was 35.7. So that's like an increase of 3 Celsius, which is crazy. But yeah. So tell me a little bit about how was your upbringing in Rio then? Because you obviously have Danish citizenship. You have dual citizenship, just like myself. You have family that comes from European background, basically from the Netherlands. So tell me a little bit about how was growing up in Rio, and how did your family somehow end up moving to Brazil back in the day?
Yeah, well, the moving to Brazil part goes way before I was born. Actually, was my grandfather and my grandmom, who both were Dutch, and after the Second War, there was a lot of Europeans going to South America because nobody was sure the war was over, so there was a little fear in the air that it might come back. And so my grandfather and my grandmother came to São Paulo, and they had actually my father here and other 5 kids. And after a few years, they saw that the war was over indeed, and they went back to Holland when my dad was 11. And after my dad finished university in Europe, he decided to visit Brazil again because he's never been here since he was 11. So when he was 20-something, he was like, okay, I want to check out how is the country where I was born. So he got a job offer to work in Rio, and he moved to Rio. That's when he met my mom back in 79 or 80, and I was born in 81. So the rest of his family all stayed in Holland. So my dad came by himself, and so he had me and my brother here, and I grew up in Rio. And I mean, childhood in Rio was pretty cool, you know, having the beach nearby. So that was a constant part of my life, going like every weekend to the beach and all that. And when I started playing music, that was a little weird because the rock scene in Rio is really weak. Although many artists they're already established, they moved to Rio to live there. But like the upcoming rock music scene, it's very poor in Rio. You know, it's weird, and maybe because of the beach, maybe because of surf is so big, so it's like people are more focused into that. You know, so I grew up there, had a band there. With Rafael, who is now in Eagle Q Talent with me, and actually spent some time with me in Rio, back in the 2000s.
Yeah, it was back in 2005, I believe, 2005, and I remember
that was when I had that band with Rafael going.
Sayoa, right?
Sayoa, yeah. That Andreas from Sepultura produced one album.
Yeah. You guys ended up touring Europe. You guys ended up touring Europe and playing festivals and things at the time, didn't you?
Yes, it was. We did a tour with Sepultura in Europe, and we toured some clubs, played some alternative festivals. It was pretty fun, and this was back in 2008.
Yeah, I remember when I was in Rio. At your apartment back then, and you showed me that a documentary called "What the Bleep Do We Know," and I remember like watching that, and that being something that really, really, really influenced my my perspective and my way of seeing things in life. I mean, I was always very spiritual myself, coming from my family. I have a background within spirituality. My mom is a true believer, and my dad, we're all Catholic, so I grew up in this very Catholic household. But I remember watching that with you, and that like it was really like game changer in many ways. Very, very interesting documentary, and we're gonna get into that later on. But so being in Rio, and then like you said, difficult kind of rock scene, especially for up and coming artists. How did you end up getting involved into? Where did the mindset for becoming an entrepreneur yourself, like because you basically hosted and managed and worked on a very big festival back in the day, didn't you? You and Rafael together.
Yeah. Well, so because first I was very. How can I say that? Ambitious with the band, but not in a greedy way, but in a money sense, not in a greedy way, but much more on like I wanted to be big with the band, and I had no clue how hard that was and how much you need to get done. But the point is, I was very ambitious, so I figured, I need my band. When you have a new band, one thing that is that you need to spread the word, and you need to play in front of as much people as possible. And when you are young, like I was, around that time I was like 24 or 25, but I was like, I had no clue of everything that is involved to make a band happen. Now I learn much more about it. But back then I was basically thinking, we just need to play with bigger bands and then it's going to happen, something like that. It's not that simple though. But back then I thought it was. So I was like, okay, so if we need to play with bigger bands, and it was kind of hard to get in big tours in Brazil. Like when U.S. bands or European bands would come to Brazil, it was really hard to get on the tour. So I kind of figured, let's put a festival together and let's us hire the bands, because we know some players in the market, and we already knew some bands from playing in Europe. And I was like, let's put a festival together, and we play. So that's kind of how it started. So basically in the beginning, the drive was to make a festival where we could play, and bring bigger bands to headline and everything, but that we could be on the lineup. But well, running a festival is no joke. It's no easy job. It's actually extremely stressing and a lot of pressure, and the whole time, from booking the talent, booking the artists, to ticket sales and promoting and production and everything. So very quickly we learned that we couldn't handle both, keep doing the band and the festivals. We learned that was pretty hard. And at the same time, the festival was developing aggressively, and we kind of we broke the band. Me and Rafael, we went like, okay, we need to focus on this, and that's what we did for a few years. Then, as you know, the festival got big. We ended up being for a few years the biggest festival in Brazil. Rock in Rio was not around. So we had bands like Rage Against the Machine, Dave Matthews Band, Linkin Park, Queens of the Stone Age, Peter Gabriel, Black Eyed Peas, Snoop Dogg. I mean, so many artists. Kings of Leon. It was big.
And how did you guys back then? How did you manage to get in touch with all of those artists? How did you manage to kind of like, obviously, to fund all this as well, to raise the money to get this festival done? I mean, I can only imagine how much money was involved, and not only that, but like the contacts, on the personal level, that I actually am more interested. Like, how did you earn somehow people's trust? Because back then you were still kind of like getting into the game, as per se.
Yeah, well, you build up step by step. We started with a small festival, then we delivered it, with smaller bands and everything, like a smaller place, and then the next year you do a little bit bigger, and because you already delivered the first one, it's easier to get some level of sponsorship, and when you grow, you need to get investors. So that's kind of how we did. And then when we went really big, like when we went to those huge lineups, we had a partnership with advertisement agency in São Paulo, a big one. And basically our deal with them, they wanted to do a festival anyway. Actually, in the beginning, the agency owner's idea was to bring the Woodstock brand. He wanted to do a Woodstock in Brazil. And because we were doing our own festival, he came to us and he said, look, I want to partner with you and do Woodstock. And we go like, well, listen, we have our own brand. It's going really well. We want to go camping next year. We are planning to do in the countryside with a camping area. So that's what we're going to do. And he really pushed us and proposed us. He said, let's do this. I do the festival with me, and I'll be responsible for getting the sponsor and the funds. Because when you go camping area, when you go like 70,000 people a day, that's really expensive. So he said he would take care of sponsorship. So we said, okay. And in the beginning, the idea was to do Woodstock. We went to New York a few times negotiating the Woodstock brand. I ended up doing a lot of the negotiation back then. And at some point, I mean, the Woodstock group, it's complicated. There are people that are super cool. And actually Jennifer Roberts, her dad was one of the main partners, and Jennifer and her brother own the majority of the brand. She's super nice. I'm still in touch with her to this day. Like literally spoke with her a couple months ago. But there's more people on the decision board, and it's not simple. It's just not simple to get done, And then at some point, they were asking for a license fee that was just too much. That would not make sense. And I remember me talking to Jennifer, and I was like, "Look, I think this won't fly. This is just not making sense." And she goes like, "Man, I agree with you. I don't think you should push it anymore." And that was funny because we ended up not doing the business, but being friends. Like for a while we were really close, and I suggested, me and my partners on my company, we suggested to this publicity guy. his name is Eduardo, who suggested, look, man, let's just make a new brand. You can use ours, or you can make a new brand. And he didn't want to use ours because he didn't want to. I think he didn't want to add value to our brand. So we just started a new brand that was called SW. That stands for Starts With You. And the festival was about sustainability, So what's kind of the vibe he wanted was like back in the day, Woodstock was about peace and love, and no wars, make love, not wars. And in this age, he felt like, now should be about sustainability. So that was the festival was all about. And when it became really big, to answer your question regarding the funds and the money, it came mostly from the advertisement agency, from sponsors and also from broadcast deals and this kind of stuff.
And so the SW had what, two editions? Was it two?
Yes, it was two editions. Yeah,
and
3 days, 5,000 people each day. 3 days each edition.
Right, and ultimately, what led basically to? Well, I'm not so interested in actually knowing why it didn't carry on, but if you don't mind just telling us a little bit about the reasons why there was no third edition. But then, what did you get yourself when it comes to music? How did you? What were you involved in between that time that SW basically faded away and up to the moment that you got together with what is now Ego Kill Talent?
Well, let's go by parts. My role on the festival and on the whole production was dealing with the artists, the international artists. So my role was to be in touch with the agencies, managers, and the artists. Book the headliners, book the talent. And you also asked me before, how did we manage to reach those bands and artists? And basically, it was also a work of building a relationship with the agencies, because the way this business works, it's not many people understand, but the way it works is an artist or a band, usually they have a manager who runs their career, who helps manage the career and build up the career. That includes looking at tours, the record deals, merchandise, publicity. So manager takes care of the 365 aspects of the band, of the artist, if you will. So the agent only sells the shows. The agent is responsible for selling the shows. So those two, characters are very important when it comes to the artist's career, And then of course you have the label, but that's another game. I'm talking now specifically about what I did on the festival. So I would be the guy. The manager cannot sell a show. It needs to go through the agent. That's a law actually in LA and some other. I'm not sure how it is in Europe, but it still is the same format. So you have a manager and an agent. So my work was to develop the relationship with the agents and managers and bands, and get the deal done of bringing them to play our festival. And the way we got to them was like I said, building up the relationship. Going to LA, New York, and London at least a couple times a year. To shake hands and to look in the eyes of the agents. And basically there are, I would say, 4 to 5 main agencies in the world, and basically probably 80% of the big bands are in 2 of those agencies.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a very small circle, and I end up entering that circle because we were doing the festival, we were delivering it, so I developed a relationship going there every year, like I just said, and they don't give you the big acts right at once because they don't know how solid you are. But once you do like 2 years of a well-done festival, then they start giving you bigger bands, bigger acts, just because they don't want to risk it, to give a date of a big band and then you don't deliver it and then they have a big problem in their hands.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. I was the one calling London, New York, and LA every day and exchanging emails and having no time to sleep at all because the time differences don't allow you to sleep. Like when I would go to sleep, I would go to sleep when LA was leaving the office, and that was around almost midnight in Brazil sometimes. But 4 hours from that, London was already waking up and working. So it was very stressful for me because it was like the adrenaline and the rush of getting things done and getting the acts and talking to agents and and everything can become a huge problem. So that was very stressful.
Were you doing this exclusively back then?
Yes, just that. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no way you can do anything else, man. When you're that involved with that, there's no way. Mm-hmm. And then the reason it how do you say it, the festival didn't kept going was basically because the advertisement agency that we were working with, they for the third year that when we were planning to do the third year, they didn't manage to renew a couple of sponsors. I mean, the main ones. One of them, it was a big brand that left Brazil. They just decided to leave the market. And the other one, I don't really know why. I don't really know that part because I was not involved in that. And to tell you the truth, I was kind of glad that it happened because although it was an amazing feeling to have like Rage Against the Machine on stage and watch that from stage, I wasn't really happy, man. I really wasn't happy doing that. It was too much stress, and my feelings that it just wasn't meant to continue. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was a weird feeling too because, well, at that point, I mean, when we are talking that festival with that size, when it was that big, I was already not playing guitar for like 5 years. I didn't even know where my instruments were. I didn't know where my equipment was. My gear was borrowed. I landed my gear, to studios and friends, and it was all over. And I didn't even know where it was. Like I knew some guitars were in a friend's studio. I knew some amplifiers was in another friend's studio. I didn't know where my stuff was. For a while, I was so stressed with dealing with that I couldn't stand music. I just couldn't listen to music anymore. I was just so sick of the whole thing, the whole environment, and not just this world of agencies and managers, that too, but also like the local partners here. Some was driving me nuts. So my iPod back then, I was still using iPod. My iPod had no music. My iPod was just like meditation and quantum physics. Speech and this kind of stuff. I had no music on my iPod. I haven't listened. I think I spent like 2 or 3 years not listening to music at all. So for me, it was a weird momentum because, like I said, at that point, the band was my old band with Rafael was totally over. And I was a little frustrated because I would go to LA and New York and whatever and sit down with those big managers and agents, sometimes have dinner with big bands. And I had no band of myself, I had nothing, I had no work to show, I had nothing, So it was weird because all this started because I wanted to play with my band. And then I was finally sitting down with those big players of the market, decision makers and everything. And I had no band. They were looking at me just as a promoter or something like this. So I was a little frustrated about it. But at the same time, I had acceptance, of that's how life turned out to be. And that's fine, as long at that point, because I was listening so much meditations and this kind of stuff. And I was meditating and do all kind of self-improvements, finding my inner peace and everything. At that point, I was like, it's okay, it is what it is. I was in peace with it, a little frustrated, but in peace with it. Mm-hmm. And that's when we get to how Eagle Q Talent came together, if you want to go on that now.
Yes, please. Yeah, I'd like to hear a bit about how how things basically happened between you and everybody. You obviously knew Raphael for a long time. He was your old friend. Jonathan, you knew him for a while as well. But then, how did the rest of the band came together?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know if you can listen to my dogs. They walk around sometimes here. But well, at that point, Jean used to play drums in Sepultura, and I met him because we toured with Sepultura a few times. And so one day Jean called me, and I was still a festival promoter. So he called me and he goes like, "Man, I just left Sepultura, and we were both living in São Paulo, and Jean is not from São Paulo, and I am not from São Paulo, as you know. So he called me and he goes like, look, man, I just left Sepultura, not sure what I'm going to do with my life, but I figure maybe we can have a coffee because you're also not from São Paulo, I'm not from São Paulo, and I'm kind of deciding if I'll stay here or if I'll go, kind of, let's talk about it, And you could tell he needed to find a direction of what he's going to do with his life because he had already two or three kids back then. And Jean started the fatherhood early. So he had three kids and a wife. So he was like, not sure what we're going to do. So he met me for a coffee. And we were talking about life, and he was telling me a little bit of Sepultura and what happened and everything. And then at some point he goes like, and what are you doing? Where are you still playing music? I said, look, man, I can't stand music. He said, what? I said, yeah, man, just too much stress. I'm rather meditate with my spare time and deal with this kind of stuff, which I really love. And he goes like, so you're not jamming at all? I said, no. He said, you're crazy, man. You got to get your guitars back and let's jam. Let's see what happens. So I basically brought a couple guitars I had in Rio, and we start jamming. And to make a long story short, we start liking the song that was coming, the music that was coming out of the jams. We had no singer. We had just the beginning was just me and him. And actually, funny enough, we did some jams with Raphael, who is now in the band, but back then was just a jam, But so me and Jean, we start developing some ideas, some riffs, So we start to meet like every week to develop some ideas and start to entertain the idea of, maybe we're going to actually have a band. And since the beginning, I was like, there's this one singer in Brazil that, in my opinion, he's the best singer in the country and one of the best in the world, who is Jonathan, and I told you, and I know him for years. We haven't speak in like 8 years, but I mean, we were very close, and the only reason we didn't speak in the last year is because he lives far away, He lives in the south, and Brazil is huge, but he's a good friend, and he's the best fucking singer in the country. And Gian was a little skeptical. He was like, yeah, not sure because we wanted to sing in English. We already knew we wanted to sing in English. And Jean lived in LA for years. He had a band that did well there back then. So he was thinking maybe we should get an American singer, because we want someone who can really sing in English. And the standard, if you want to play that level, you got to be really good. And he was just not sure that there was someone that could deliver that. And we were talking already about having someone from the States to sing, just because we want someone singing in English really, really well. And we didn't want to sound as a foreigner band. And well, anyway, so we were jamming and having some songs coming together. And then I was already really close with John Domayan, the drummer of System of a Down. He's a dear friend, one of my best friends. And he came to Brazil to spend vacations with me. He split with his girlfriend. He was like doing nothing in the summer. He was like, so I'm just going to spend some time there with you. I said, okay, so come. Then he came, and he didn't know back then that I had a band or anything like that. So I kind of made him a surprise. I was driving. He knew I had a studio because at that point we had already built up the studio, which is like our HQ now. So I was driving him to show him the studio, and then when we were just arriving, I said, look, I gotta tell you something. I have a band. I'm gonna jam for you now. We're gonna play some songs we have." And he was like, "What? You have a band?" I said, "Yeah." He said, I didn't know you have a band." I said, "Yeah." And John, he's the kind. Well, you met him. He's the kind of guy. He's just straight in your face. I mean,
Yeah.
he's just straight in your face with his opinion, you know. And then he goes like, "If it's a shit, I'm gonna tell in your face it's a shit to everyone in the band." I said, "Please do it." So we entered the rehearsal room, and then we played like 3 songs for him, and he was like, "Can you play it again?" Then we played again, and then he sat on the drums. He started jamming with us, and he was like, "Guys, I think you guys have a diamond in your hands. I think this is really good." So that for us was a big, how do you say, motivation, because I mean, you have one guy from one of the biggest rock bands in the last decade saying that your band is good, your music is good. You know, that guy knows at least a little bit about
just a little
about rock. Yeah, just a little bit. You know, if he headlines all the major festivals in the planet, he must know something. You know,
of course.
So we were like, okay, I think we are tapping something here, and that was around the time. So John, he said, "Count on me. If I can help you with anything, just count on me." And just bear in mind one thing, you know, that for me, I was very worried about how I would make the transaction, the change, the perception that people in the industry had of me, because everybody looked at me as a promoter, as a businessman, and not as a musician. You know, many people didn't even know I was a musician. Mm-hmm. So I hear sometimes people saying, "Oh, you know, Theo have so many contacts in the show business internationally that really helped the band." I'm sure he helped the band, but it was not simple in my head. You know, it was not easy, because I was very concerned of how it's something like, imagine if your dog is sick, and then your best friend, who is a cooker, turns to you. He's like a chef of cuisine. He turns to you and say, "Carl, let me do a surgery on your dog, because you don't know that, but I'm also a vet." You would go like, wait a second. Maybe I'll go to a vet, you know, because I know you as a cuisine chef. I don't know you as a vet, you know. Mm-hmm. So it was a little bit like that. I was like, how am I going to deliver? You know, how am I going to call managers or agents and say, "Hey, remember me, that I buy your talent and I have a festival? Yeah, can you book my band because I have a band?" And they go like, "Do you have any idea of how many calls those people get from bands every day?" And they are like, so that was something that in my head was like, I don't want to lose a friendship. Of course. I don't want to lose a relationship. So like, if I know those managers and agents, and I just start telling them, "Okay, help my band," I will lose a friend, and you know, because they look at me as a friend and not as something to be asking favors the whole time, you know, this kind of stuff. And,
of course, it's a very tender territory to touch.
Yeah, and those people are tired of that. You know, they are tired of that. Can you imagine if you are the manager of a big band like System of a Down or the Foo Fighters or Metallica? Imagine if you're a manager of one of those bands. Have you any clue of how many people come to them and just ask for favors? "Oh, I have a band, can you listen to my band?" And then immediately they look at those people and they put them in a different place. You know, they're like, "Okay, it's just struggling band wanting a piece of me," you know? Yeah. And I don't want that. I didn't want to change my relationship with them, because I was really close to a lot of people already. They were friends, you know, and they didn't know I was a musician. So it was weird for me. And people have no idea how this industry works. It's like everybody is very much focused in doing the work for their artists, and that's their job. Their job is not to help develop your band. Their job is to do the best they can do for their artists, you know, for their clients. So I was very concerned on how to do the shift, you know, So, well, I started just to give the information, you know, that, you know, I have a band now. I'm jamming. That's happening, and I'm sure for many people in the industry, it was just like, okay, he's jamming. You know, it's not a real band. It's just a jam.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of, in my head, I was like, yeah, good enough. You know, it's important that they start shift the perception of Theo is a businessman promoter to Theo, it's kind of artist, you know. So that's what I was trying to shift back then. And well, I told you all this in parallel, just to give you an overview of how the vibe was, you know, and my concerns back then. But when John from System left the Brazil from that time period he spent here, like a couple weeks or something, maybe 3 weeks, we sat down the band and we were like, okay, guys, we need to find a singer, you know, because this is a real thing. I think that John knows what he's talking about, so we should do that. And that was also when we came with the name, because we wanted to be a name that delivered the message by itself. You know, we wanted to be something that is true for us. And like I said, with all the meditation I was involved with, and our talks actually behind the playing, you know, behind the music part, when we were just having a beer or doing a barbecue and talking, we would be talking about the challenges of life, you know, the challenges of the mind, of the ego. So we wanted a name that stands for it. And then there is this saying, too much ego will kill your talent. So when we saw that, we were like, okay, maybe we can get those 3 words, ego, kill, talent, you know, and just use that. And that's how that's when and how we found the name and decided that would be the name of the band.
That's amazing. It's such a powerful name, and it's so true. The meaning behind it, it stands for so much, and the more and more that the band is being developed, and the more and more that the band is getting out there, it never ceases to amaze how much people do enjoy the name, and when they hear it, and relates to it, exactly, relates to it in a deeper level that sometimes people don't even stop and think about it, which brings me to the point that you mentioned it already several times, that you started meditating a long time ago, and you've been connected and interested in those subjects of meditation and the mind and quantum physics for a long time. Do you recall? No. Can you recollect when and how you started to develop an interest for those things? Is it something that comes from perhaps from your family, or is it something that just somehow, you know, when you showed me, for example, that documentary many years ago, where were you getting, who was feeding you with that sort of information, with that sort of content back then, and then eventually you evolved, like you're saying, from you know, being that person that was extremely stressed, working with lots of different agents and putting together this massive festival, and taking a break from all of that and just simply like following somehow routines in regards of meditation and spirituality?
Well, I think I was born with that eager and that desire to know more about those basic questions. You know, where do we come from? Where are we going? And what are we doing here? You know, I was just since I was very young. Since I remember, I was always very curious about religion and spirituality, and I was just very curious about that since I remember. I mean, I remember when I was like already 8 years old, I was already like pretending I was older and signing books. Signing subscription of books that talks about spirituality and, you know, and ghosts and this kind of stuff. And I was interested not only on the ghost story, but I was also interested in what's going on. I mean, what's going on? If they exist, where are they? And I was just very curious. And I grown up in a Catholic environment, and my mom was Catholic. She's a little bit a mix of stuff now, but she raised me as a Christian. And the interesting thing is that I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and my grandfather was very Catholic, and my grandmother, this is now it's in the mother's side. I was telling, first you'll tell the story of my father's side, but on my mother's side, my grandfather was Catholic, and my grandmother was, how do you say, spirit? I don't know in English the word for that.
She was, she practiced the spiritism.
Spiritism, yeah. So, but it was interesting because they are both still alive and they're both still like that. But it was very interesting because my grandfather, he was like very Catholic and kind of not liking much that my grandmother had this spiritism side. So she would kind of hire from him, like she would just go, yeah, whatever, pretend that she was not dealing with that. Because there's this fundamental belief that is different, right? For Catholics, when you die, you go to heaven or hell. And in the Spiritism, you need to develop, so you might reincarnate in Earth or somewhere else. It's just like a process of evolution of the spirit. And I actually believe in both, if you want to know. I believe that, I don't believe you go to hell. I believe we kind of are in hell. And I believe our hell is in our minds, it's in our heads, it's in our beliefs. And you can have a situation happen in front of your eyes, and that can deliver you straight to hell because you just feel all anxiety and a lot of stuff, or you can be peace. So I think hell and heaven are inside of our minds, depending on our beliefs and in terms of what we give value to. And at the same time, I think that we reincarnate to become more mature to the point that we stop believing in everything that makes us suffer, Mm-hmm. So, anyway, I grew up with this extremely Christian environment, but at the same time, and Catholic environment, and at the same time having my grandmother that would, like, on a side, she would tell us stuff like how the Spiritism works, and a ghost is just a spirit that left the body, and this kind of stuff. So, and I was very curious about both, and at some point I just became curious about other religions too. I mean, what else is out there,
Mm-hmm.
And it's very interesting because when you look deep enough and when you search deep enough, you will see that basically all the religions, they have some stuff in common, and it's, in the end of the day, it's very much about forgiveness and about detachment, which is kind of the same, right? Mm-hmm. Forgive someone, it's kind of to disattach yourself from your believing that that person should not have done what they did.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the difference between forgiveness and detachment in that sense?
Mm-hmm.
So like if I forgive you, I'm detaching myself of the idea that you shouldn't have done that,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So you start looking that there's so many similarities, and your question about how do I get in touch with this material, like what the bleep do we know documentary or other stuff. It's so crazy, but when you are sincerely engaged, and this is something just you with yourself or you with the universe, it's not related to any religion at all. But when you are sincerely engaged to find peace, and because in the end, that's the reason everybody looks for a religion, right? You're just looking to be in peace, that's why. And when you're really committed to that, no matter what, and when I say no matter what, I'm saying you're going to have to let go of a lot of your beliefs, and it's not easy to love. It's not easy to love, especially when people are not doing what they think they should be doing,
mm-hmm.
So you just think they don't deserve your love, because love, it's very, and what if it's not unconditional, is it love?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I think love, to be love, by definition, it must be unconditional. Otherwise, it's not love. It's a kind of a bargain. You know, it's a kind of a deal. You know, do what I want and I'll be good to you, and I'll call it love.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think when you are committed to really find inner peace, and you are committed to improve yourself and be able to love more, when you do that, and you might not even realize you're doing that, but the universe brings you answers, man. It just brings you answers. It brings you answers in a form of a stranger talking to you on the supermarket line and saying something that you're going to go, wow, that really made sense, you know? Or, I don't know, the cashier of a store where you're buying something is reading a book, and then you look the name of the book and you go like, shit, this name really resonates with what I'm looking for. And then you buy that book and it becomes a material that life brought to you. Or it's just crazy, because it really flows. It really, really, really flows. And also in the relationships, because I remember when I was a promoter, and even with those players that we are talking about from the industry, from the show business, I just found myself so many times talking about all this that we are talking right now. So, like, I would be with this big agent of whatever agency, one of the most important in the world, and then he would receive a call, and we would be hard for him, something personal, and then we start talking about forgiveness and love and all that we're talking about. So it's crazy, because it follows you. You know, if you're committed to that, it follows you, and the opportunity comes to talk more about it and make it more real for you. You
Yeah,
know?
the more and more that the more and more I hear podcasts, and I've been listening to several different podcasts nowadays, and you get to learn stories from all kinds of different important business people out there in the world, especially people coming from Silicon Valley in California, and people that are like really forefront thinkers nowadays. The routine in the morning, the things that these people do, the meditation, the spiritual side of their lives, and the structure that they follow. There's so many similarities. People are like, it's very rare actually nowadays to meet people achieving things that on the eyes of others might be completely impossible, because the impossible is just simply not willing to lose, not willing to fight for something that you truly believe that you can achieve. And a lot of people are totally connected. It's all about the diet, it's all about the meditation, it's all about the spiritual side of individuals. And with that in mind, do you follow any morning routines yourself? Like, for example, the meditation, is it something that you try and do it regularly still? Did you go through a phase of which you were meditating a lot and then that faded away from your life? Was there any sort of goal with the meditation that you wanted to achieve? Did you want to get to a point where a lot of people do meditation just to calm themselves, just to bring their blood pressure down, to just give themselves like I myself, to give some more control over your mind, because our minds are always rushing back and forth. And I do find on meditation that on the long run, it's like everything else in life. You can't expect immediate results. You can't just sit down and then meditate for 15 minutes 3 days in a row and expect something to happen, because it's not going to happen. Nothing's going to really change immediately. It's like exercising as well, or diet. You can't expect things to just change very quickly. So I kind of like prolonged my main question, which was just basically if you follow any morning routines, and what did you try, if you ever tried to achieve anything with meditation, what would that be?
I was saying that in my experience, What I learned is that, and this is very much related to Advaita Vedanta. Not sure if you are familiar with that philosophy, but it's also very similar to Buddhism in many aspects. But basically, the problem is that you believe that you are something that you are not, right? And what I'm trying to say with that is, like, you are not your name, you're not what you're doing, you're not even your body, because all that changed the whole time. I mean, you don't have one cell in your body that is the same that was 7 years ago. So our ideas are changing, our beliefs are changing, everything is changing the whole time. Your professional career, it changes, the momentum, everything changes. And if you are attached to any of those, you're going to suffer because it's not constant, right? So if your peace of mind depends in everything that is constantly changing, that's not peace of mind, right? That's suffering, because you're going to be in fear, right? So let's say if like I have a band, right? If I think that my peace lies in my band doing well, this is fear, because I'll be in constant fear of the band not doing well, right? And at some point, it won't, because life is just like that. You have some good moments, some moments that are not that good, and that's part of the roller coaster of life. And at some point, everything will end, and you know that. You might not want to deal with it, but that's the crazy thing in our existence here, is that one thing we know for sure: it's going to end. So I'm telling you all this because there is one thing in you. There is a secure, a secure port, if you will, which is who you truly are. It's yourself. It's your presence. When you say I, you are pointing to this witness behind your eyes that looks to the life, looks to the world, looks to life, looks to everything, and that never changes. That never changes. I mean, if you remember a moment of your childhood, just like really go to a moment of your childhood that you remember, and now the sense of being there, it's the same sense of being here now. So the sense of me, the sense of I am here living this, it never changes from when you were 7 years old till today. It's the same feeling of being present. And what I learned from my experience is that our main goal is to remember that that's what we are. That's what we truly are. And I'm saying this because it's so easy to forget that. It's so easy. It's like in a heartbeat, you are engaged with problems of the daily life. You're engaged with, okay, what do I need to do next? I need to go to the gym. I need to eat this or that. I need to, it's a bunch of I needs. They are bullshit. All of them are bullshit, because there's nothing you really need to be what you already are, So, of course, that might change the experience you're going to have in life. I mean, if you go to the gym and you eat right, you're going to have an experience in life of feeling better, feeling more light, and that's fine. That's great. You're more than welcome to go for that feeling. That's great. But that's not peace, right? That's just a feeling. That's just an experience. That will go away. At some point, it will go away, because at some point, at the end of the run, at some point you will die. But at some point you're going to get older. At some point you might, even if you're eating well every day, maybe one day you're going to eat something that's going to make you feel bad, because even plants can make you throw up, So it's like, but all that is fine. I'm not saying you should not do that. Just do whatever pleases you, and that's totally fine. But remember that what you truly are, it's the presence that is witnessing what you're experiencing. So what I try to do in my meditations is to go back to that place, to go back to the present, to go back to the I am, to go back to this silence. And it feels like a silence, it's the sense of me, the sense of I, and you take away the name, take away the body, take away whatever your mind is saying you want, but just the witness. It's a silent witness. It's a silence that is in you, which you can call life, maybe, and
Or soul.
what it or soul, yeah. And the crazy thing is that you know what I'm talking about, and you know that everybody in the world have that presence. It's something so intimate, it's so intimate of you. It's something that it's as intimate as you can get about yourself. It's the sense of me. It's the sense of being here. And it's crazy because everybody has that, and you know it. When you look to anything that is alive, when you look to a dog, you can see in his eyes there is a presence there. And the crazy thing is that it doesn't matter your religion, it doesn't matter where you're from, it doesn't matter even your species. There is a kind of a presence. And some say that's God, that's identified with different personalities. So to answer your question regarding meditation and daily routine, what I try to do is to be connected with that sense of being present as much as I can. And sometimes that's really hard, especially when your mind jumps in your mind in the morning. It jumps in your face in the morning, going like, okay, you need to do this, this, and that.
Especially with all of the we are never encouraged from the day we are born up till nowadays, with all of the technology surrounding us. We are never encouraged in any way by the world to be quiet, to sit still. From the moment that you open your eyes, you are stimulating your brain in ways of which we have no idea.
It's because we don't really nobody really wants that. Mm-hmm. That's the crazy thing, because look, when you are in peace with that, the rest of the world kind of doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And well, some philosophy says that this is all an illusion, right? The material world is an illusion, and quantum physics, it's kind of proving that already, that it's all an illusion. That, well, let's put it like this: if it won't last forever, it's not really true, is it? It's just something that's gonna pass. And how true is that? Mm-hmm. Does your presence pass? Does it change? So it's crazy, because you are something constant, you are something changeless, and everything around you change. Couldn't that be that what you are there is constant? That's the truth, and all the rest that changes and goes away, that's an illusion. Couldn't that be? Mm-hmm. And some philosophies said that the reason what you just described happens, the reason that we go so fast, trying to interact with the world, it's because if we don't do it, it stop matters. It stop having existence at some point. So we want to keep it alive. At some point, you don't want to be. There's a part of us, and that's really interesting. That's when Freud's concept of inconscient comes really into hand, because a part of you, although you say, okay, I want to fit my presence, I want to meditate every day, I want to be in peace, but a part of you does not want that. A big part of you does not want that. A big part of you wants to be Carl or Theo. A big part of you wants to achieve things, want to look good, and all that is fine. We don't need to demonize that. That's okay. But just be aware that a part of you does not want to be in silence and in peace. It's just boring. You want something. Yeah.
Do you think that there's something? There is definitely a connection with everything that you just said, with the fact that we identify ourselves so much with the mind. We identify ourselves so much with the ego. We don't. It's very difficult. We are not. We don't learn in school how to deal with this incredible thing called brain, our minds. What is this voice that is always present there, that is always talking to us, and that is always creating anxiety and creating things that
but the thing is, the trick is, are you the voice or are you the one who's listening to the voice?
That's a good point.
Yeah, because what I found is that you're not the voice, you are the listener, and the listener, regardless of what the voice says, the listener, it's always in peace. When he identifies with the voice, then you can have hell, right? Because look, you simply are. There's no way the listener is not there in the mind. There's no way. You simply are the whole time. What can happen is that you can identify so much with the voice, so much that you forget that you're that. And then you start believing in the voice, and you start believing that you should be doing this. You should have more money at this point in your life. You should have more success at this point in your life. And then you start to suffer because you believe in that mind, in that voice. But in the end of the day, it's just a belief. It's just a thought. It's just a thought. But when you believe in that thought, it gives power. You give it power to rule your peace. And it doesn't matter what the thought says. If you don't identify yourself with the listener, you will suffer. Because this voice, it's time-based. And it's based in things that might or might not happen.
Do you...
It's a challenge. It's a challenge.
It is a constant challenge.
Man.
It's a constant challenge, exactly. And like I said, like, unfortunately, I don't actually know nowadays how it is, but the educational system in Brazil, where we got our fundamental education from, and in Europe as well. I know in Europe that they don't have it any sort of subject in school dedicated to develop or try and encourage kids and even teenagers to control and to understand. Control wouldn't be the word. I don't like that word very much, but like more to create an understanding of how this powerful brain of ours works and make connection with things that you might not even believe. I always say that you might not believe in energy, you might not believe in spiritism, you might not believe in the magic that is just unveiling in front of ourselves, in front of our eyes on daily basis. I truly believe it's the cosmos and the cosmic energy that surrounds us. It is real. We are all energy. If we zoom out from ourselves, we get to see that so clearly, like all this orchestra, this marvelous orchestra happening inside of our bodies. You have the white blood cells, you have the red blood cells. They're all synchronized in this perfect a symphony inside of you, delivering oxygen to all your organs, and just it's life. It's all alive. Those cells are all alive inside of you, but you never think about, hey, white blood cells, shall we fight this virus that's trying to, tackle us down right here, right now? You never think about that. That is happening automatically inside of you, but you never see that. But you zoom out of that, and then you have yourself, you have the body, you have this whole thing of which you can identify with, which you can see, which you can touch. But if you keep zooming out of that, don't we all become just little cells? Don't we all become just part of one single thing? If you zoom it out of planet Earth and then look down, I can't see anything from out in the universe. You can only see this blue circle, which is planet Earth, and that is just such a tiny particle from what we understand as being the universe. And what is out there? I mean, we barely know what's out there. We all have these those ideas, which are obviously like the ideas of basically everything that we know are based on evidence, are based on studies. But a lot of the things that we know and we take it as being the reality, being true, those are stories told. It can be politics, it can be society, money. Money is a creation. We believe that piece of paper will deliver what is written there. The Bank of England will honor my £50 note. The Bank of America will honor that dollar note. Then you believe on that. But if you turn your back to that piece of paper, it's just a piece of paper, has no value. It's a piece of paper. But we give value to those things. And anyway, all of those things are creations, and some of them are.
Yeah, well, you said something that just reminded me of a sentence, a phrase from a book called Course in Miracles, that it says, everything you see have all the value you give it for you. You know, so everything, it can be the money, like you said, but it can be anything. It can be something that happened. You know, you can give a lot of value to it or no value to it. You know, like, let's say if somebody is in a bad day and cuts you on the road and gives you the finger, you can give a lot of value to that. And you can even end up in a fight and go like, how dare you, you know, how dare him just give me the finger? How dare him? Then you're valuing it so much. Or you can give no value at all. And maybe you won't even see it because you don't give any value to that. So everything we see have all the value we give it for us, you know. So it's that's the tricky thing. And what strikes me when you said everything you just said, you know, about like looking at the planet, you know, like just that blue dot and how small are we and how many things are happening to our body and we don't even know. What strikes me is, okay, so go back to that image, you know, of that blue dot in the vast black void or whatever, which is the space. So when you look at that blue dot and you try to imagine what you are on that, how relevant is whatever your mind is telling you that you need, you know, how relevant is any belief you have? It's nothing. It's just, it's nothing, you know. So when you look at that blue dot and now think about the things you worry, you know, because you worry that things should be different as they are right now. You know, I don't know, I should be doing something different than I am right now. I mean, come on, it's nothing, you know, it's just a belief. It's just a belief. One thing that helps me sometimes is putting things in perspective, you know. So let's say I remember at some point in my life I was struggling, like right back when we were starting doing the festivals and starting being a promoter. I lost a lot of money on festival, and it was the money I got from an investor, and I was suffering so bad with that. I was suffering so bad. I was like, shit, I'm owing money, you know, and I might not be able to pay, and you know, I was just suffering with that and feeling like shit, like I'm shit, I failed, you know. I was very depressed, and then a thought came to my mind, which was like, okay, what if I tell you that 1,500 years ago, this one guy from the Roman Empire was owing money to his investor? 1,500 years ago, everybody died, you know, there's no one alive from that time. Would you care that someone in the Roman Empire failed, like over 1,000 years ago? Who cares? But that guy cared, probably. You know, there might be someone over 1,000 years ago that failed in something and was owing money to someone and felt like shit. But he died, his wife died, his kids died, grandkids, grandkids, everyone is gone. So was it worth it for him to suffer? You know, it doesn't. I'm not saying you shouldn't be responsible. But one thing is to be responsible, another thing is to suffer, because actually suffering and feelings of guilt and shame, it doesn't help. If anything, it freezes you. You know, you just become, how would you say, there's nothing you can do. You become just a suffering thing, you know. While it's different of being responsible, you know, and usually good ideas and proactive actions that gives results doesn't come from fear. They usually come much more from a place of peace, you know. Anyway, so because you said the blue dot and it's a perspective thing, and I like sometimes it's really good to put things in perspective of space and time. because then you see how insignificant it is. You might think that's very important, but when you look, it's really not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've always been interested in things that basically help somehow you achieve a different level of consciousness, and I've been always very connected to spiritism and very interested on the subject. And more recently, I've been listening to podcasts and talking to people. I even attended a workshop, which is in connection with basically substances that not help, that's not the word, but they change the connections on your brain and somehow dissolve the prefrontal part of your brain, which is what basically you identify, which is basically where the the idea of identifying of who you are, this is me, and this is what I do, myself, my ego, etc., basically dissolves that. And it's substances that were banned many years ago. There's political reasons for that. There's the pharmaceutical industry, which is massive, has reasons, and the lobbying industry and all of that business. I'm talking about magic mushrooms, psilocybin, DMT, which is the principle of ayahuasca, and LSD, and then MDMA. And some of those, actually, in America, MDMA just passed phase 3 on the FDA, which gets into which means basically it's a drug that it's already been strongly used and tested in laboratory and with in people already. Soon enough it will be in the hospitals. Obviously, talking about substances that, and never encouraging anyone to try those things, but I'm talking about not on the recreational sense of it, because a lot of people use those things on recreational environments. They go to a party, they want to go crazy, and then they take this stuff, and sometimes things can go wrong. They really can go wrong. However, they can go wrong when you alter your brain, when you alter your mind, when you create different connections, different nervous connections on your brain, which are there. However, we haven't evolved yet to reach those without those substances. Maybe one day we will, who knows? But for now, we simply cannot. But they are there. They are here right now on my brain, on your brain over there as well. When you alter those things, obviously, you don't know the person taking those substances, that you don't know if this person suffers from depression. You don't know if this person has any sort of traumatic mental disorders. You don't know. And then when you combine those things, again, things can go wrong. However, there's no case. There was never a case, because it's not possible for somebody to have, for example, an overdose of DMT, or an overdose of psilocybin, or an overdose of any of those things that I just mentioned. With all that in mind, do you have any understanding about those? Is it something that you've heard about it? I'm sure you did, but do you have any kind of ideas in regards of those things that I just mentioned?
Yeah, well, first, I think that because you asked me before that about meditation, and meditation for me, in my experience, and what I find most results out of it, it's about taking the time to be fully present. And if your mind comes with thoughts and everything, watch them, don't resist them, but don't identify with them, don't follow them, and just be focused on what you are. Be focused on that presence, right? Be focused on that awareness that is constantly here, that is kind of eternal, if you want it. And when you meditate in that way, and I'm not talking about trying to visualize anything. I'm not talking about, you know, uh, focus on your breath. I'm not talking about on your breathing. I'm not talking about any of that. You can use that as tools to calm your mind, but I'm talking about just being fully aware of whatever is happening and look at that awareness that you are. Focus on that. Focus on being the listener and the witness, and be with it, because it can recognize itself. When you are there, it's really, really powerful. It opens so many things. I don't even know how to explain. I mean, it can unlock so many things, and you really need to let go of control, because that what you are doesn't need to have control over anything. It simply is. And when you try to control anything, you kind of de-identify from that, because control is not of the same nature of the presence of the awareness, because it doesn't need to control. It simply is. When you try to control something, you are assuming that you are more fragile than you truly are. You don't need to control anything, because you simply is. You simply are. So I'm saying all this because what I read, and I haven't take I haven't take any of those things actually that you mentioned. But what I read from people that I think are very much in that place that I just told you about, and in that philosophy of meditation, if you will, what they say is that it can give you the same experience of being present. Like I said, when you are so identified with that, it can take you to places, and those drugs can take you to those same places. But what I heard is that when you do it through drugs, it's kind of, how can I say, you are going deep, but still you are in the grips of the mind. And when you get to that place by being present and being the silence, you also go to the same place, but you are not in the grips of the mind. You are more free. So one way, it's a kind of a way to bypass the mind, but it's still there. And in another way, you kind of let go of the mind and you transcend it. That's what I read. Mm-hmm. So I can't say by experience that's what it is, but that's what I read. And I've also been reading that you can kind of stimulate your brain to produce DMT. We know the brain produces it when you're born and when you die, but there's some studies saying that you can stimulate it to produce it without needing to take it. Yeah, I'm like, I have absolutely no, I have absolutely no problem with the idea of maybe taking a substance to try to experience something. If that's part of your search for inner peace, just go ahead and do it. It's not part of mine so far. It might one day be. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find it really, really interesting. I don't necessarily. It is something that I have close friends of mine that just recently did spiritual retreats, ayahuasca spiritual retreats, and it has been quite life-changing in many fronts for them, for the better. And it's not necessarily something. So I do believe that some people do go for those things as trying to find an escape from their lives and trying to find meaning for their lives, and I don't think that's necessarily the right path to pursue, because it's not that a substance or a retreat will bring the meaning of life to the surface. It's not that. If that was the case, that would be so easy, right? Everybody that has troubles in life, let's just participate on this ritual, which is a very serious thing. It's not that as simple as I am putting on words now, but people would just go for those things, and then all of a sudden, okay, great, I got all my issues and my traumas and everything that is in the back of my mind that I didn't even remember existed anymore because it happened 20 years ago, but it's still there somehow playing a role on my brain, and therefore making me have actions repeatedly on my life because of certain events that I experienced back in the day. I don't think you can simply just go through that and erase those things. I truly don't believe on that. However, like hearing people like Tim Ferriss and a lot of other like big guys in entrepreneurs in America and CEOs and people that are like trying to have a more holistic approach to things like depression and patients with terminal disease and cancer and things like that. It's extremely interesting what's happening, and if you didn't, I'm gonna share with you, Theo, some of those podcasts so you can
Sure.
listen a little bit about it. It's really really interesting. I have never done myself magic mushrooms or ayahuasca, but those things are things that I genuinely am slowly, and like I said, going with the right intention, going with the right intention, supervised, taking the right minimum dosage, going with the right intention to it, with a clear mind, with an open heart and positives all over. It's not about taking it and going in a park and frying, on a Sunday afternoon. It's about like seeking things that I participated to this workshop, like I mentioned it to you a couple of weeks ago, microdosing on LSD for runners. I was in this music and running festival in Wales, and there was a workshop delivered by this guy. I can't remember his name now, but it was really, really interesting. And what he was showing, basically, in many ways from studies and other stuff, is what I mentioned to you, the connections that your brain makes. Basically, they analyzed brains, normal brains without the influence of any alcohol or tobacco or any kind of drug, and a brain influenced by a microdose of LSD. And the connections that the brain does are, I mean, it's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. So many different parts of your brain lit, and so many different dots from one side to another get connected, which we right now are not connecting. You can't even through well, I can't really say that because that I don't know. But as far as my understanding goes on the matter, you can't even achieve that under like normal circumstances, not even with meditation or anything else. And those things, they play a role in the sense of helping people, somehow drop that pill that they've been taking for a long time just to keep them going. People like are dependent on chemicals nowadays in a very strong way just to keep them going, just to make them get out of bed and go to work because they hate their lives, because they have troubles with their families, etc., 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 which obviously could go all the way back and talk about the fact that we don't deal with our minds. We don't go and see a psychologist or psychiatrist from early stages of our lives, and I truly believe that we should all have access to that on a regular basis. The world will be a better place, a much better place. But then again, is that of an interest of the general? Is that of the interest of the people on the top of the pyramid, the people that are trying and controlling in many ways the world, the massive industries that we have? Anyway, it's a very broad subject, but I believe that there is a very, this is coming back. It's inevitable. It's just like, for example, marijuana, for example, something that has been banned for many years. Now it's legal in many different states in America. It's something that I truly believe in the UK will be, we will be kind of like Amsterdam or even California within the next 5 years. I truly believe on that. MDMA now being used in hospitals in the US slowly. Magic mushrooms being legalized in Denver, Colorado, and there's another state in America that just legalized them. And by legalizing, I mean they are legal now for being for its use on environments that are extremely well looked after by people that really understand what they're doing and the effects of it, and there's a lot of observation going on, but it's authorized already, because it's proven more and more that those things, they can actually help so much without causing any physical, mental harm to the patient. And that's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it,
Yeah. I think that, look, like I said, I think in the end, it's really all about finding inner peace. And we are all wired in so many different ways, right? So many different belief systems that each one of us have. So I think that some people might need that, just because they are wired in a way that that will help them. So that's why I think that the path or the trajectory of each individual, it's very personal, and like I said, whatever helps, if it helps to have an antidepressive or whatever, just the person may need it, they might be feeling suicidal, and that might save their lives, so why not take it?
Oh yeah, no, of course, I didn't mean to say that.
And at the same, I understand, man, but it's the same thing with mushrooms or whatever, if that will take, look, in the end, both, like you said, when you connect dots, different dots in your brain, what you're doing, you're generating experience, right? You're generating a new experience, and you can have that. You can have that through drugs. You can have that through experiences too, like jumping from an airplane with a parachute. That gives you a sensation, right? And like I said, we are wired in so many different ways, and some people might be experiencing something that it's giving them pain, and for whatever reason, and they may need something like a drug that to help them go through that. And it's my belief that in the end, the peace is inside. Really, it's not coming from outside, from anything you take outside, but things from the outside can be tools, and maybe it will work for a time period, and for another one, it won't, or maybe you will change for something else. But the goal in the end, in my opinion, what we are all looking for, even when you don't know, we are looking to be in peace, man. We are looking to be happy, if you want, And through peace and through happiness cannot come from anything outside of you, because it turns into fear. It turns into fear of losing it. It doesn't matter what. It can be a person you love. It can be a situation in your life. If you think your peace and happiness are coming from a condition, external condition, you are doomed, because you cannot maintain anything in this world. But that's a challenge. Like I said, it's a challenge because we are wired to believe in so many things. Since you were born, you've been taught that you need this and that to be happy. You've been taught that by your family, by the media, by people you admire. So I think it's a constant process of unhooking and letting it go, and just looking that actually everything is good as it is right now. It's all good. But we just believe it is not.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. But then, for example, like the highs that we have on life, like when amazing things happen, when you achieve something, they've been working really hard for it, when you have those experiences of, in this case, playing shows, being on stage and doing, traveling the world, and all of the excitement that surrounds that. Is there anything that you try yourself to do on a regular basis to somehow detach from that or disconnect from that? Because we all want to indulge and enjoy those experiences, and you do want to experience that feeling of.
Yeah, there's no problem with that. I mean, it's like eating, right? It's like, let's say the experience of being on stage, it's amazing. It feels great. And you know what else feels great? Sushi. I love to eat sushi. But if I get attached to any of those, I will suffer, because the sushi is gonna end. I can only eat so much. You know, I can eat like I think I can eat like maybe 45 pieces of sushi because I like it
Me
so
too.
much. You know, I like it so much, but I cannot eat 46.
Uh-huh.
So if I think that my happiness depends of eating sushi the whole time, I'm doomed because I just can't eat sushi the whole time, so I won't be happy. And the same thing with things you want to achieve in life, like being stage, like we with the band and achieving so much and so happy. Of course, it feels great, and I want more because I like it. It feels good. But if I think that my peace and my happiness depends on that, then I'm gonna suffer because I won't be my whole life on stage. It doesn't exist. You know, I need to sleep, I need to eat, I need to, you know, I need to leave. It's not just that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good moment. It's a good experience. But that's it. That's what it is. It's a great experience, and I love playing music. It's one of the best experiences in the world. Just like sushi is one of the best foods in the world. But that's it. You know, one thing is one thing, another thing is another thing.
Absolutely.
So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I want to be mindful of your time, my friend, and so I'm gonna start to wrap this conversation up. I do have a feeling that we could just carry on, and I'm sure we're gonna have plenty more opportunities to do this thing again, and even obviously it's always I always love spending time with you and talking to you because I do connect with your way of seeing things and the way that you think and your beliefs and obviously all of the things that you brought into this conversation, so insightful, so interesting, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be being part of the roller coaster. I would like to just get on with basically just a few simple questions. Doesn't necessarily need to be a long answers, but things that perhaps you don't get asked very often. So, for example, what do you do to unwind? What's the perfect lazy day on your books?
I love watching TV series.
Are you watching anything in particular at the moment?
Well, I'm just finishing the last Stranger Things, and look, I like both. I like the most blockbusters, and I like the most how do you say, sophisticated documentaries. I like both, but I really like the blockbusters, you know. And so I'm watching Stranger Things right now. Just finished watching Big Little Lies, which is HBO, amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Just watched Chernobyl. Don't know if you watch it, also from HBO. I'm always watching some TV series. That's what I love to do on the weekends, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and with my girlfriend. And I like to cook too. I love to cook. That's one of my favorite things to do. So there's that too.
Nice. What would someone who doesn't like you say about you?
Who doesn't like me?
Yeah.
That they don't know me.
Excellent.
I'm kidding. Well, people might say that I can be very anxious, you know, and I can be like, let's say if we are doing something together, whatever, a project or whatever, and the ball is in your court, as we say,
Mm-hmm.
I will be pushing to give me back the ball, you know. So I don't like to live for tomorrow what I can do now. So it's a little bit of anxiety and also a little bit of not liking to have things left undone, business wise. So I can be a little pushy with that. And also, I think my girlfriend would like me to be more organized with my clothes. So just keep everything around. So there's that too.
Nice. What are the things that occupy your mind more than other people?
Well, in a daily basis?
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah. In a daily basis, I think funny enough, I'm very occupied with food. Because I do the cooking at home. So, of course, I'm talking besides all the business part of it, because I take care of a lot of the business of the band. So I'm always handling some aspect of the band business management. But aside from that, in the back of my head, I'm always like, okay, what am I going to cook tonight? Okay, maybe I'll stop at the supermarket at some point and buy this and that, So
Yeah.
I already did this week, so something else tomorrow, So I'm kind of always think about that.
Nice. What's your view about money?
My view about money is that I want more because it gives you some freedom, of not needing to worry about. I mean, our talk is becoming very food orientated, but I like to eat well, right? So I think money is the kind of thing that can help you to do stuff you want in our society, So I like to have enough money to not bother with the brand of whatever kind of ingredients I'm buying to cook. I can just buy them without looking at the price tag. I think money, it's good in that sense, because it gives you freedom because we organize our society this way. That's the only reason. But if you want to go more philosophical about it, I think it's an instrument of control, and keep people behaving. Oh, somebody just arrived here.
Cool.
Oh, it's mail. Hang on.
All right.
Hey, Carl, I'm sorry.
That's okay. No problem. I'll add it.
My girlfriend. Yeah, you're gonna add it. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So, what kind of?
Where were we?
We were talking. We were talking about the freedom of having money and being able to afford, buying all the ingredients that you like and things like that.
And in a more philosophical sense, I think money it's an instrument of control and keep people behaving, because unfortunately, I think we are not developed enough as a society to be moved by sympathy and how do you say sympathy? Empathy. Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
we are not developed as a society, to be moved by empathy and caring about each other and sharing. So we are very egocentric in that sense, and money kinds of keep everything in balance. Unfortunately, we need it for now. Hopefully, someday we're going to achieve a development of society that we won't need it anymore.
Absolutely, yeah. I totally relate to what you just said. What kind of food then, on the subject of food again, what kind of food do you go for when you want to treat yourself?
I love sushi, man. I know I already mentioned that, but I really like sushi. It's one of my favorites.
So sushi would be definitely the treat.
Sushi would definitely be the treat. I also like some Italian. Like I love burrata cheese. I love truffles, but sushi, it's one of my favorites.
Amazing. Cool, Theo. That's it, my friends.
Cool.
Thank you so much for being on the roller coaster. I'm sure this is episode number 1 with you of many that we will end up doing down the road. I hope to see you soon. I will see you soon in September, end of September. I'm going to be in Rio, São Paulo, Rio together. And I wish you all the best, my friend. And I'll speak to you soon.
You too. Take care. We talk soon.
I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation, this podcast, as much as I did doing it. So if that's the case, please do follow on Instagram at rollercoastercarl, myself at Carl Casagrande, on Twitter, same thing, Facebook, same thing. Do subscribe on iTunes, subscribe on Spotify. That's very, very much appreciated. Thank you and have a great day. Cheers. Bye-bye.